Happy Tuesday, ladies as well as gentlemen. Papa Boris is back for some more Hearthstone content, and we're going to resume our newbie-friendly series of videos. In these videos, we'll construct a deck before your very eyes, and then we will play some games with it in constructed play mode against random opponents to see how the deck works, but also to learn about some of the game mechanics, because in this series of videos, I stopped to explain how the different things work. Now, in our first video, we made a free-to-play Paladin deck. It was pretty straightforward. Then we made a slightly more complicated Mage deck, the Freezy Pop control deck. Here we're going to make a deck that's not necessarily stronger than the Freezy Pop deck. It hasn't really been performing as well for me as the other decks have, but it is more complex, so it'll be a chance to learn about some of the new mechanics in Hearthstone. We're going to play with the Rogue. Now, the Rogue's special ability is that she creates a 1/2 dagger and equips it. Remember, hero abilities are abilities that each class gets. Every class gets a different one. It costs 2 mana, it does not use up any cards, and you can only use it once per turn. Weapons have 2 numbers. The first number is how much damage the weapon deals, and the second number is how many times you can attack with the weapon before it breaks. So this dagger that Valera creates with her Dagger Mastery hero ability deals 1 point of damage whenever she attacks with it, and she can only attack with it twice. So yeah, it's not a super great weapon. You're not gonna go to the depths of Mordor fighting your way through with this hero power Dagger Mastery. But then again, hero powers don't cost any cards, so they're decent, but they're not like supposed to be ball-breakingly powerful. We're going to make a deck that features, among other things, the combo mechanic and the Enrage mechanic. So let's take a look at the combo mechanic first. This is unique to rogues. Combo means if you play another card before it that turn, then you also get this thing. So, for example, this creature here, the SI7 agent, he's a 3/3 for 3. But also, if you play another card before you play him on your turn, you get to deal 2 damage when he comes into play. So it's, kind of below average if you play him without the combo, but above average if you play him with the combo. So for combos, while you sometimes will avoid using the combo, it's often important to try to get the combo out. So we're going to put him into our deck. We're also going to play with the weapon, the Perdition's Blade. So this weapon deals 2 damage per hit, and you can attack with it twice. And the Battle Cry is deal 1 damage. Now remember, Battle Cry means a comes into play effect. So when you cast this weapon and you put it into your hand, you get to deal 1 damage to something on the board. The combo is, if you played another card before at that turn, you get to deal 2 damage. Well, this is actually one of the exceptions to the rule that you almost always want to use combo. This thing's pretty good even if you don't use the combo, because you can deal a damage with it, and then you can attack with it right away, dealing a total of 3 damage, even if you didn't use combo. So it's a really cool weapon, and we're going to put it into our deck. We're also going to grab Eviscerate. This is a very, very good removal spell. It's 2 mana, deal 2 damage. Combo, deal 4 damage. So like a lot of combo cards, it's a bit below average if you use it without the combo. 2 damage for 2 mana is a bit below average. But if you do use it with the combo, it's above average. 4 damage for 2 mana is way above average, so that's pretty awesome. We're going to play one of the most loved and simultaneously hated rogue cards in this deck as well, the Defias Ringleader. This is a 2/2 for 2, which is a little bit below average. But the combo is that you get an extra creature along with it, a 2/1 Bandit. So getting 2 creatures for 2 mana, a 2/2 and a 2/1, is definitely above average. So we're going to be playing him and hoping to get him early in the game. Now, the idea behind this deck is that we're going to use a lot of removal and hopefully win the opening of pretty much every game we play. That's not to say we can't lose the mid-game. It's also not to say that we won't sometimes lose the opening. But we're going to use tons of cheap and effective removal to dominate the early game. Rogues, I wouldn't say they have the best removal of any class, but they definitely have the best cheap removal of any class. We've already got the Eviscerate. Let's also grab a Shiv. This is deal 1 damage, draw a card for 2 mana. So, the flavor text is pretty great. So, it's an important card for us to have because we're not going to have too much card draw in this deck. There's no room in this deck for little dinky card drawing creatures like we used in the Mage deck. So we're going to try to get as much card draw as we can off of our effects. So Shiv is one example of that. We're also going to play with Fan of Knives. You deal 1 damage to all enemy minions and you draw a card. This is also really good for flushing out some important creatures in the game that only have 1 health. So we'll be happy to have that. Rogues also have Deadly Poison, which is a 1-mana spell that gives your weapon +2 attack, so it can make your weapon a lot stronger. And remember, rogues can put a dagger into their hand with their hero ability, so as a rogue, you always have access to a weapon, and making Deadly Poison good. Again, this is a very, very cheap spell. And we're also going to actually play a 0-mana spell called Backstab. This is one of my favorite rogue spells, maybe even one of my favorite cards in the whole game. Deal 2 damage to an undamaged minion, and it is 0 mana. Well, you really can't beat that. Notice that because this is a spell, this will also turn on our combo cards. So if I backstab something, then Defias Ringleader will be comboed, the SI Agent will be comboed, so will the Perdition's Blade, and so on. So the backstab is a real nice, synergistic card in this deck. It makes the combo happen. Now, what other things do we want in this deck? Well, let's also get some creatures. We want to make sure here that we have things to play in addition to killing our opponent's stuff. So we're going to play an Amani Berserker. This creature has the Enrage mechanic. So Enrage means that if the creature is damaged, it gets some kind of a bonus. So this creature is a 2/3 for 2 mana, and as long as it's damaged, it also has +3 attack, so it actually has 5 attack. Well, that's a pretty good bargain when you're talking about a 2-mana creature. At the 3-mana level, let's add in a Flesh-Eating Ghoul. This card actually used to be a rare card, but in a recent patch it was turned into a common. It still feels like a rare to me. It's a 3-mana 2/3, which is below average, but whenever a minion dies, you gain +1 attack. So this is a potentially very high-impact card. I mean, if you can imagine growing this to 6 attack or 7 attack, which can sometimes happen, you're getting a real bargain for your 3 mana. So it's important to have those kind of bargain cards. At 4 mana, we're going to play something that doesn't seem very exciting, but it really makes a big difference. The Chillwind Yeti. It's just a vanilla creature. It's a 4/5 for 4 mana. The thing about this card is it's got a lot of toughness and a lot of power. It's just really difficult for your opponents to get rid of this thing. And so oftentimes your opponents have to spend 2 cards just to get rid of this 1 card, the Chillwind Yeti. And it hits really hard, so we're going to be happy about having this in the deck. At 5 mana, we're going to put in the Gadsden Auctioneer. This is a card we've used before. Whenever you cast a spell, you draw a card. This is nice for us here because we have a lot of cheap spells as a rogue. We got Backstab, Deadly Poison, Eviscerate. We're also going to be adding in some more cheap stuff. So this is a very effective card drawer, and again, since we don't have other forms of card drawing in this deck, it's important to get some of that in here. Now, the other 5-mana card that we're going to add is called the Spiteful Smith, and this is the card that will give our deck the name. This is going to be Spiteful Rogue. So the Spiteful Smith serves 2 purposes in our deck. Number 1, it's a 4/6 creature for 5 mana. It's really, really large. This is a very spiteful and also a very burly Smith. And sometimes we're going to win games just because our opponents can't chew through all of this health. Don't underestimate the value of just having big creatures in your deck. But the Spiteful Smith also has an Enrage ability. Again, Enrage is a mechanic that means when the creature is damaged, something else is happening. And in this case, it's a bit of a weird one. Your weapon has +2 attack. So as long as we can damage this Spiteful Smith somehow, either by running it into an opponent's creature, or perhaps by casting a Shiv on it, or perhaps by casting a Backstab on it. Remember, we can cast stuff on our own creatures. Our weapon is going to have +2 attack, so at minimum, that Dinky Dagger that we get becomes a 3/2 instead of a 1/2, which is incredibly good. So this will be something that doesn't come into play in all the games we play, and we might not see it in action. But we have it in our deck. It's got the potential to come into play in certain situations. Okay, so we've got a core of our deck. We've got 4 cards left, so there's 2 more cards that we can put in. And for these, we're going to go back and dig into the Rogue pool. So we're going to want a card called Conceal. What Conceal does is give your minions stealth until your next turn. Now what this means is that the minions cannot be targeted directly, and they cannot be attacked by enemy creatures. So this is a nice card, because it can protect our vulnerable but good creatures like the Gadsden Auctioneer and the Flesh-Eating Ghoul. It'll also draw a card off of the Gadsden Auctioneer, so it's an extra spell in this deck that is very cheap and will draw us some cards. And finally, let's make sure that we have a little bit more removal here. Oh man, I always forget, sorry folks, I always forget what the last card is that I wanted in the deck. I'm pretty sure it's, well, we'll see. I'm pretty sure it's this one. We can change it later if we need to, but I'm pretty sure the card I wanted is Betrayal. So what this card does is it causes an enemy minion to deal damage to the minions next to it. So you can potentially get a lot of killing power off of this card if your opponent does not position his minions carefully onto the board. I have a nagging suspicion that actually it was something else that I wanted to put into this deck and not that Betrayal, but for the life of me, I cannot remember what it was. Oh, I remember now! Oh, God. Alright. So forget about that Betrayal. Let's go ahead and grab this very, very important card, the Ironbeak Owl. There we go. So the battle cry of this Iron Beak Owl, which is a comes into play effect, is that you silence a minion. Now silence means you remove all of the text from the minion. So the minion loses all the buffs that it may have accrued, it loses all the special abilities that it may have, and in particular, one ability that we will want to be removing is Taunt, so that we don't have very many creatures in this deck. We want the creatures that we do have to be able to attack the opponent. So that's the primary thing that this owl is in the deck for. So I apologize for forgetting the last card. It's always the one that gets me. But here it is, our Spiteful Rogue deck. Now I've tested this deck in I've tested this deck in unranked mode. I've never actually played it in ranked mode. So we're going to go into 3-star Masters, and we're going to see how it plays. So we might lose horribly, who knows, but I've gotten a lot of feedback from folks saying that basically they don't mind if I lose. So, and I've realized this as well. There's some other Hearthstone, there's some other gaming channels that post Hearthstone videos, and the folks who make those videos don't necessarily play well, but people keep watching their videos because it's entertaining and you learn about the game. So we'll treat this as an educational run more so than a watch Boris kick-ass run. We're up against Angels Fall the Rogue, so there's always a lot of pressure, I feel like, when you're up against a fellow rogue. But I would say that we have a little bit of an edge here, because we are second. Now remember, if you're the second player, you get a card called the Coin, which is a 0-mana spell that gives you an extra mana for the turn, to kind of compensate for the disadvantage of going second. Now that's important because it's a spell, so that means it actually triggers our combos. We're going to ship him back because he's a bit expensive, and we're going to ship back the Owl. It'd be nice to get a creature we can actually play, but we're going to keep this guy because we have the Coin, and potentially we can actually coin him out on turn 2 and deal 2 damage to a creature that's on the board. We also have Backstab to trigger combo, should we desire to do things that way instead. So in a rogue versus rogue match, the player who is second is definitely at a little bit of an edge compared to the player who is first. Alright. Well, the Fairy Dragon's a very interesting card. This is a 3/2 for 2 that cannot be targeted by spells or hero powers. However, it can be targeted by creature abilities, and it can also be attacked directly with your weapon. So what we're going to do is we're going to coin, which counts as a spell, to get an extra mana crystal. Now we're going to play the SI Agent. Notice how he glows yellow. Yellow means combo activated. So we're going to play him, and we're going to deal 2 damage to this Fairy Dragon, who for some reason cannot be targeted by hero abilities or by spells, but can be targeted by other stuff just fine. So I'd say that we got into an edge in this opening game. That's like what I said was the function of this deck, is to try to always win the opening, because we don't have that much of a late game, so it's important to get as much of an edge early in the game as we can. Here we got to put a 3/3 on the board while taking our opponent's 3/2 off the board. Anytime you can put a creature onto the board while killing a creature from your opponent's board at the same time, you are in good shape. Alright, well my opponent plays another one of these, and actually this is very, very good for her, because this cannot be targeted by spells or by hero powers. What that means is I cannot backstab it. So backstab deals 2 damage to an undamaged minion. That would be ripe for the Fairy Dragon, but I can't do it because it can't be targeted. So this is a good move by my opponent. She's definitely catching up now. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to play the Flesh-Eating Ghoul, and we're going to attack our opponent. So this deck is definitely an aggressive deck. We're trying to deal as much damage as we can. So the opponent can actually kill whichever of these creatures she wants now. Probably she'll want to kill the Flesh-Eating Ghoul with this Fairy Dragon. It is also possible that being a rogue, she can actually kill both my creatures and leave this Fairy Dragon alive. Rogues just have really, really good removal. She's going to play Sap to return the Flesh-Eating Ghoul to my hand. That's smart. She doesn't really want to return this to my hand, because then I'll get the combo again. And she's going to go ahead and she's going to kill my 3/3. Well, things definitely could have been worse there. Alright, well, we drew into another SI7 Agent, which is lucky for us, because what it means we get to do is we can play Backstab to kill one of these creatures. Combo is activated. We can play the SI7 Agent back and kill the other of these creatures. So this is a real back and forth wild ride here, rogue versus rogue. We are doing a very good job killing each other's stuff, and we can't seem to get anything to stick. Now next turn I might have a pretty good play. I might be able to play the Gadsden Auctioneer and backstab something, or I might be able to play a Flesh-Eating Ghoul and eviscerate something. My opponent cast Shiv and did 1 damage to my SI7 Agent, and now she's going to silence it. Now this bespeaks of a bit of a desperation, because generally you don't really want to silence a creature that doesn't already have any abilities, so it looks like she's just desperate to put whatever on the board that she possibly can. Well, we have a couple of options here. One is we could make our hero power the dagger and just kill this owl. When you attack minions, they hit you back, but we've got a lot of health, so it's not that big of a deal. Now, a more aggressive option would be to backstab this owl to spend no mana, and that would allow us to play the Defias Ringleader and also the Flesh-Eating Ghoul. Now, against some classes, I'd hesitate to do this because we'd put a lot of stuff on the board that only has 2 health. Rogues, however, while they have some mass removal, they don't have too much that deals 2 damage, the rogue would have to have a very specific combination of cards to do that, so we're going to actually get kind of aggressive here. We're going to play the Flesh-Eating Ghoul to activate the combo on the Defias Ringleader, play him, get a free 2/1 Bandit because we activated the combo, and now we're just going to backstab this owl to stop it from killing our stuff. One other option would have been to not backstab the owl and let it kill my 3/2. That would have kept the backstab around so that it would draw a card off of the Auctioneer. I chose, however, to try to get more creatures on the board and go for an aggressive continuation. My opponent plays Fan of Knives, which is a card we have to deal damage to everything, and she actually had 2 of them, haha, so she was able to kill all the stuff and draw cards while doing it. So we're basically back to totally even Stevens here. Alright, well, we're going to play Namani Berserker, dagger up, and there's no particular reason to hold on to our dagger here, so we're just going to start dealing damage. So perhaps I would have been better off had I played the Gadsden Auctioneer last turn and used a backstab to kill the owl and draw a card, because then I would not have been as vulnerable to those Fan of the Knives. Although my opponent also had a backstab, so I would have died anyway. It's a tough call. My opponent has an Azure Drake, which draws a card and has +1 spell damage, so it's a very, very strong creature. However, we're going to be able to kill that off by playing Gadsden Auctioneer. I now have enough mana to play him and combo out the Eviscerate, so notice how the Eviscerate deals 4 damage and draws me a card. That's pretty sweet. If I had an extra mana, I would totally play Conceal right now to hide this Auctioneer from the rogue's plethora of removal. So you're seeing the full breadth and depth of just how much removal rogues are able to do. If the rogue does have removal, which she is very likely to, and this guy dies, that will be very sad. She had, oh no, she had a sap. Okay, well this is actually not the worst thing. She spent 2 mana to put this back into my hand, but if that had been an Eviscerate, it would have died, and I'd rather have him in my hand than, you know, dead. So I'd say this worked out really well for me. Okay, now we're going to do what we wanted to do last turn. I'm going to play him again. I'm now going to combo out Eviscerate to kill her Auctioneer to stop her from drawing more cards while drawing a card myself. And I'm also going to play Conceal to hide my Auctioneer and draw another card, so that my opponent cannot target him with her butt-tons of rogue spells. And we drew into another Conceal, so I'll be able to actually do the same thing again next turn. We also have a Perdition's Blade here, which I might use to kill creatures off. My opponent still has not managed to actually hit me. She's going to Shiv me to deal a damage and draw a card, and she's actually drawing an extra card because she also had this Auctioneer, so she's mainly just using it for card draw. But I would say now we are a little bit ahead. My opponent still has plenty of cards, so she could still very well win the game. However, I am going to now get to do a lot of good stuff here. So what we're going to do, let me take a look. Yeah, what we're going to do, I think, is we're going to swing with my Auctioneer. Now that he's attacked, I'm going to play Conceal to, well, I'd actually like to wait on this Conceal maybe until I draw more creatures, but then again, I'm not drawing any more creatures anytime soon. Well, anyway, we're going to Conceal him to draw a card and hide him. We've got a Flesh-Eating Ghoul here. Alright, so I wish I could have seen this ghoul first, but that's okay. We're going to play the ghoul now. And then we're going to use this Perdition's Blade. So because this is comboed, we're actually going to get to deal 2 damage to that Auctioneer that my opponent has. And then we're also going to get to attack it for 2 damage. And kill it off. And also grow our Flesh-Eating Ghoul. Now there's a lot of ways the opponent could deal with the ghoul. Unfortunately, I had to draw the card with Conceal to get the ghoul, so I couldn't conceal it. Had I been able to, I would have been really well off. And I also could Shiv my opponent for a damage and a couple of cards, and I will actually do that because I have 2 mana left over and I don't want to waste it. We got an Ironbeak Owl with one of our card draws, and we got an Namani Berserker with the other one. Okay, so we're going to have a fair amount of creatures here coming up soon. The owl kind of dies to the rogue's dagger pretty easily, but she's getting a little bit low on health, so she's got to be kind of careful. My opponent's going to play a Kobold Geomancer, which gives her +1 spell damage, and that makes Backstab deal 3 damage to my ghoul, so the fact that it wasn't concealed is definitely very, very, very sad. And she's going to play Headcrack, deal 3 damage to the enemy hero, and combo, you can return it to your hand. So she's going to start Headcracking me. This seems to be a spell damage rogue deck. So Headcrack is a card that you actually only deals 2 damage base for 3 mana. It's dealing 3 because of the Kobold Geomancer, and you keep getting it back into your hand as long as you combo it out. In general, I think that card kind of sucks. to be totally honest, I think it's a really bad card. I wouldn't recommend that you play with it. So I'm happy that my opponent's playing with it, because I really, with my creatures, will do a lot better than she is able to do. So 2 of these cards are Headcrack. She's going to get 1 card and 1 other one, whereas I have actual creatures dealing damage and stuff. I think we can risk hitting this Geomancer one more time. So you have to take care with when you play Rogue about your health total. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play this, and I'm going to combo out this Defias Ringleader, and I'm going to make a dagger. Let's put Deadly Poison on it to get it ready for next turn and draw a card off of our Auctioneer. And I could play Fan of Knives. It doesn't do anything at the moment, but it'll draw me 2 cards. And I think I actually will do that, just to get a couple of cards. I should have done that first, actually, because you always want to draw cards first thing on your turn. But anyway, it's all good. So now we swing, and notice my opponent has 2 head cracks and a couple of other cards. It's very, very unlikely she'll actually be able to kill me this turn, and she'd be a little bit hard-pressed with just 2 cards to deal with everything that I have. Well, she's going to play an Ironbeak Owl of her own to silence my auctioneer, so he's no longer drawing me cards. Then she's going to draw a card herself, and it's a difficult thing to do, but you really should always draw cards first, because it's possible that if you draw a card, it will change your mind about what you wanted to do. And now I think we might be able to win. Yep, that was well played. So we had 4 plus 6 is 10 damage, plus the Poison Dagger weapon. Yeah, we were gonna definitely win that game. Alright, so that was a look at the Spiteful Rogue deck. And as that was a fairly long and involved game, we're going to go ahead and pause the video here. So I'll be back soon with another video, another quote-unquote more games video, where we play some more games with this deck, and you can see it in action against hopefully a more diverse array of opponents. But I hope you enjoyed the video, I hope you enjoyed the deck and seeing it in action. If you did, do please like and or subscribe, I'll appreciate that tremendously. And if you'd like to see more games with this deck, then stick around, because they are incoming soon. I'll see you then.